your learning is enhanced if you don't push yourself to the point of pain. And so, yes, I was just trying to reconcile the writing with the lesson yesterday, or with some of the lessons we had yesterday afternoon, and I couldn't really. I mean, Gloria made a couple of really good observations. Do you mind if I say? No, you say.
No, do, Gloria, because
it's really interesting.
Really rich discussion.
I can be rude.
Be rude, Gloria. Be rude. Be rude.
About me as well.
I can't remember what I actually said that landed on you.
You have our permission, Gloria.
No, I don't know what landed on Alison about what I said, because I tend to rather go off at the mouth sometimes.
Don't we all? Feldenkrais can go off at the mouth too, let's face it.
So I was just talking about how he's just a man, put it mildly, and a mere male. And so rhetoric doesn't always match action. And I was talking about the idea of the ego, and how the ego and bonding patterns and things like that can influence people's drive in what they're doing, regardless of what their rhetoric, what their belief systems are. Other emotional kind of psychological elements can get in the way, and how it is quite seductive when you're out the front doing things. And I know, because it's happened to me, because when I've been doing counselling workshops, that you really want the students to be getting it, and you're really kind of driven by that, and you're wanting them to achieve, and you sort of lose track of all kind of other things. And so it's always a play between philosophy, that staying in that proximal zone of, I'm not trying to push people beyond it, but at the same time there's that psychological ego. Anyway, so it's this complex kind of interplay. And what's that for us in that is that, number one, in going with the Feldy thing, is to just look after yourself and go do, no matter, even if you're thinking you're taking a lot of rests, take more. And do, if you, that's sort of, is that kind of what I said?
Yes.
All right, so you add now to your bit of how you understood what I said.
Because Gloria did make the good point of asking me, well, what did that say about me, that I, and I know what it says about me, which is, yes, if he says do this, I'll try and do that. Although I know I rested a load more times than the people on the screen. And he made the joke about my minutes are quite short. His minutes are the rest of minute is very short. But anyway, I was just interested in, so it was really good to have that discussion. Because, I suppose I find quite a lot of the Amherst teachings, in my limited experience, like that. People seem incredibly athletic and gung-ho, and the things that they're doing are quite hard often. I find them quite hard, yeah. Anyway.
They are half your
ages. I think that's a factor. I think you'll also find that the people who love the challenge are up the front of the room.
And that's where the camera, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who are at the back of the room.
Mm-hmm.
I think, though, I was having an interesting discussion this morning. To me, what I love about Feldenkrais is he's Feldenkrais. He's not being, and things change. That was in 1981, and we're talking about learning. What? 1981. So how long ago is that now?
And he was 37 years ago.
But I think it's, how do I put this? It's, you know, you're talking about the difference between the espoused and the enacted in a way. I think he understood in a way that learning has to take place in many different ways. So what he's talking, you've got to put into, for me, the context between learning that he's doing where you're paying great attention to what you're doing, where you're developing your conscious awareness, you're developing your ability to do things. But remember, what he was getting at yesterday is babies. They don't have any of that. So what do you do? That was the question he was posing. What do you do? I'm going to explain to this baby. Could you just lift your head? This has no meaning for a baby. And what I love, the reason I showed you yesterday, is especially the second part. I'll tell you my reasons for the first part as well, but the second part is he was demanding of you that you investigate. He was demanding of you, no, I'm not going to give you all the answers. Do you know what I mean? And you're coming up with these ideas, but I don't see you on the floor exploring. I don't actually see you entering a process of inquiry. It's all up here. And I must admit, I can get really frustrated in trainings as well, because you'll postulate things to people and I just see them doing it all in their heads. And it's like our foundation is to keep coming back to making that inquiry in our sensation, our movement. That's the landmark of what we're doing as Feldenkrais practitioners. So that's what I really loved about yesterday, that he's going, no, you haven't got it. You haven't got, no baby would do that. And, you know, and I can understand that it's incredibly frustrating, but it's also that ability that a learner can go back to. It's a little bit like the story I was saying yesterday. It's really difficult once you do it. You can do something, which is like the woman who was the maths professor, to go back and to try and understand first principles.
Which is what he says at the beginning of the article.
Yeah. Do you know what I mean? How do we really do that? And as adult learners, we have to come back and use our attention. But there's also that really big place that none of you could probably deny when you were doing the lesson earlier, that you got up and you felt gregarious. Do you know what I mean? That there's something that's evoked about not paying that detailed attention, about going into global attention and really being in the environment and just moving through the environment. That is another powerful learning. And you can't pay attention in the same way when you're doing those big movements through space. You're problem solving, you're in a really different place. So it's like we can do an ATM, which we'll do again a little bit this morning, of really slowing down. Where does my weight shift? What am I doing? What's my knee doing? What's my ankle doing? What sort of learning does that evoke? And what learning does it evoke when he has you lying on the floor? You can't pay that sort of quality attention. So what happens when you're in a position, when you're learning, and you can't stop and stream through? You have to be more, it's a different attention. It's a much more global attention. You have to include the environment. And that's what I think he's doing brilliantly. So if attention is about the ability to attend, I want the ability to attend to my internal sensation and my external sensation. And how do I get in the end, as I train that, as I pay more attention, that they can be seamless? So again, another little story. This was, again, well after my training. And Jeff Haller, who I think you're having later this year, and he was doing an advanced training in Perth, and we were doing something in FI that I was finding quite complex. And he said, you're not paying any attention to yourself. I said, Jeff, I'm just trying to, it's taking all my energy to attend to what I'm doing with the person. And, you know, Jeff's gorgeous, much calmer than I am. And said, yeah. So he said, show me what you do when you attend to yourself. He said, do you have to do that to attend to yourself? Does your head have to lower? Do your eyes have to go internal? Oh. Oh. Because again, that's what we're getting at. We have habits of how we do things. So if my way of paying internal attention, and that's why Feldenkrais is doing all of these eye things and getting you to move your eye up and down to get you into how do I pay attention? Because if my way of paying attention is I have to see inside, and to do that my eyes have to be tracking what I'm seeing, or if my way of paying internal attention is never to use my eyes to pay attention. So all of those habits we're trying to get at. Have I got a habitual organisation of what I do to pay internal attention? So that this is me paying internal attention, and then I have to do a whole shift to pay attention to what's happening with the person that I'm observing. So how in between that and that do I find the space that I can be internal and external? How do I find the space that I've got all my peripheral vision and I can still look at the detail? So this ability that he talks about inclusive attention, that we have all of these domains available to us and that we're not getting fixed anywhere. So I absolutely think these discussions, I think, are so rich for you to begin to get to what is he after. Why does he do these big things? What's he asking? What's he demanding of our learning ability to put us into these different things? Or are we getting an idea that it's always about slow, small? And in the beginning, for many of us, that's what it has to be because we're not used to paying attention to ourselves.
Has to be big.
Yeah, so we're asking people initially to close their eyes to sense deeply their internal experience. There's other people that's already, they do it really well. So you're asking them to, what about including more senses? What about really staying oriented in the environment as you do this? And that's what you're exploring in your ATM process and why he does such a variety. You know, why was it that I loved really small, discrete movements? I loved all the small ATMs because I could sort of shift my attention. You got me rolling, I would feel nauseous, I would feel... because my vestibular system and my other systems, my teleceptors, weren't that integrated with my other systems. And that's what I said the other day. You've got to keep remembering we've got all these different sensory systems and we all have our preferences. But we want to integrate all of them. We want the teleceptors integrated with the vestibular system, integrated with the proprioceptors, integrated with the interoceptors, the extraceptors. We're looking for this great big sensory world to give us information.
I was thinking about what he was saying last night and in relation to what you're saying, but he kept insisting that they rest, and he complimented everyone on how intelligent they were when they rest, and he had that big spiel about slaves and robots and AI, and you think about that in terms of the progression of being able to engage in literature and art and music and all of those things, like, unless you rest. And babies, of course, they spend most of their time asleep so that they can integrate the system. So anyway, I was thinking, oh, that was great. But I woke up in the middle of the night and I was doing the full-on wiggle worm thing. And got in, yeah, and then got into a little debate with myself as how you could make a transition. How do you make that, keep all of those things, the sensing, the feeling, the action, and the thinking, and how can you foreground and background all of those while not really being asleep, but being asleep. I was trying to channel Cat. And I think by the time I got back to sleep, I think I'd figured out how to shift between those, you know, while doing the worm.
It's such a rich place, that one, isn't it? That half sleep, half...
Yeah. Yes, where you think you're, and then you have that question,
Absolutely.
Was I awake, was I asleep,
Yeah.
was I dreaming?
Yeah.
And
such a rich place
yeah.
to make new connections and
Yeah.
new things to come together.
So, yes, because it was pretty active yesterday, wasn't it?
Sorry, I just got here because the train was late this morning.
Big rail late? No.
But I don't know really what you was talking about, but but what you were saying about giving more options if the person is in the comfort zone to be, I have the same tendency to just go in before I go out. But what you were saying yesterday, making it easy for them. So for me to be ready to come out of this, it's time. I can't really go, okay, now I know how to do this, so now do the other. Doesn't make me feel ready to learn. So that's what I'm trying to say. I need time. And probably the person in front of me too. Probably I notice that she's ready to do something else, but probably it's not ready yet.
So I'm just going to address one more little thing, which is about pain. No? And I think, again, one of the things and Lisa could probably speak to this a little bit more than me, I'm just going to give my little bit. Again, how do we differentiate pain? How do we make distinctions about pain? You know? How do we, so that, you know, I woke up this morning and I thought, oh my God, my stomach is, it's doing something really differently. And then I thought, it was all of that lifting the head, and something's lengthened in here that was allowed that by what the movement was evoking. And so that discomfort is like, oh, okay, something's changing its shape, something's adapting, something's doing something that's really different. So, you know, I'm sure you've all had the experience. I can still remember, and I'm going to recall something here with Di, and we met up in Cairo, this is a long time ago, and we climbed to the top of the Cheops, the pyramid. I don't know if we bribed the guards or what we did, but we got up there. I think the next day we couldn't walk. Well, we could, but not very fast. Steps were just agony. Well, because Cheops is great, the levels that you're going up are really big. So what is it about knowing that that's just a response to unfamiliar muscle activity? You know, that I feel, things are... And then a day or two might be worse the second day. Often it's worse the second day if you've been using muscles that aren't used to working, and then it just sort of goes off again. So I think it's that difference. The biggest distinction I make about trying to get people with pain is you've got discomfort. Is it inhibiting your movement? Is it really getting in the way of your movement? Or is it just a discomfort but you can still move? And that's just an easy distinction I will often use for people after awareness through movement when they ask, if they say, I was really sore. So, of course, I don't want them to have got to the place of that they've really hurt themselves, but just also let them know that as you're changing your shape, as you're doing these things, that often there will be a measure of pain or discomfort or something happening. And it's not a bad thing. It's not something to be scared of because, and I think Lisa would agree with me here, that the biggest thing you're trying to get with pain is to dispel the anxiety.
It's the meaning we make.
Yeah.
It feels transitional.
Yeah.
And it depends on what's already happening in your system. Pain is something that is already part of how you know.
Can we put this on the...
Do you want this?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Lisa.
Yep. Through the tunnel. So I work a lot with people with chronic pain, so that's, you know, their systems are already really attuned, really ready for pain, and any shift in pain has very strong meaning for them. So it's, you know, for people like that, you're really trying to keep them well in their comfort zone because they're often pushing beyond, and then the repercussions are, you know, they might need 2 days in bed or, you know, like you. So you really, for people like that, you really do not want them going into that, although you have to also be ready for the fact that it will probably happen, and how do you manage that? But for sort of somebody who's usually has a fairly robust nervous system, healing system, a bit of pain, as long as you can make, you know, have an understanding of how and why and all of that, it's fine. You just can write it out and go, well, next time I've learned something here. Yeah.
But also, I think there's... Go on, Lisa. Sorry, you hadn't finished.
No,
Okay.
that's... Yeah.
I was also going to say it's really understanding too that with our structure, you know, so we were doing this, you know, this yesterday, all of our fascia, all of our connective tissue over the years, and the older we get, you know, it gets more set in its ways, if you like. So that's why after an ATM, muscle changes very quickly. Because it's contractile, you can get changes in muscle very, very quickly by doing very, very little. So you can get up after an ATM and go, oh, that feels so different. It's fantastic, da-da-da. And then over time, the fascia will sort of pull you back a little bit into its... into your habit. That takes a long, long, long time to adapt. So one more story, a woman that I work with who, she was born with a congenital condition. There's so many congenital conditions now, I can't remember. Since they've done, what is it, the DNA?
The genome.
Genomes. It's like all of these people are coming with all of the, and I've got, doesn't matter. Anyway, incredibly stiff. She's short, but incredibly, incredibly stiff. So, and I've been seeing her a long, long time. And she's had both hips replaced, both knees replaced, which is fantastic. Makes such a difference to her functioning. But literally, I do not lie. When I first, nothing moved in her torso. Nothing. Not one rib, not one. It was, so she moved. Yeah, from her hips and shoulders, basically. And all of this was in one part. And I have been amazed over the years. Now this, I'm talking years, probably 20 years we've known each other now. Things move in her spine now. You know, there's things that move that I would never have imagined would have been able to soften enough to those big muscles to give up so much of the work that she could begin to find some of this differentiation. So it's really understanding that, you know, there is that fascia that will keep pulling us back into a particular configuration. It's usually our anti-gravity. It's our anti-gravity response that it will pull us back into. But over time, yes, it can adapt, it can change. So what you're often feeling when you're a bit sore is often it's more some of that that's been lengthened a little bit or changed shape a little bit. And it's much more likely to occur in these bigger movements where you're really changing your orientation in space. So really be aware of that, because all of you have particular ways with your thing of where you can look easily. Where are the bits where you've really got this freedom of your head? And once you start doing a lot of all of these movements, it's asking you to find really different organisations in space, orientations in space that are really unfamiliar for you. But that's the beauty of doing these bigger movements, that it gives you the opportunity to move to some of these places that normally you don't inhabit. Okay.
You don't go to sleep.
You don't go to sleep. You have to stay awake. Yeah? But you know, and as you do more of Amherst, what you'll see, because you haven't done it, you know, that, well, you have seen a little bit, you know, just even this. He does big movements and then he pulls it right back and does, you know, the telescope eyes and brings you back into this very fine distinctions, and then he takes you off again to do these bigger movements again. So it's never that he's just giving you this experience of one thing. It's constantly adapting. And you've got to keep remembering, he didn't have a script for Amherst. Yeah? Mm-hmm. He's adapting to what he's seeing in the room, what they need to understand. Yeah? When do I need to slow it down? When do they need a bit of a kick to...
But he's really also asking people to investigate.
Absolutely.
He wants people to engage in a research
Absolutely.
process.
I agree, Philippa.
You know, unless you do that repetition, he says that, unless you actually are doing it, you cannot even find the question
Absolutely.
that you need to be asking yourself. So it's like anything, and if you want to be an artist or a musician and create something new that is self-directed and not just replicating something that you've observed and modeled, you have to engage in all these processes.
Yeah.
And immerse yourself in the language in order to then start to be able to ask questions in that language.
And I think that's a really good thing to bring up, Anna, that when people first start with Feldenkrais, they don't understand our language.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's like, you know, going into a new country and you don't understand the language. And such an important part of teaching ATM is to let people know what our language is, what it is that we mean. Explaining why we want people to go slow. Explaining why we're doing the things we're doing rather than do this, you know, do less, da-da-da-da-da. But we haven't actually given them any reason for why we're doing it. So it's like we haven't told them the rules of the game. Anyway, that's another whole question on your back. Time for ATM. But thank you, Alison. It's a really great